ants. You've seen like how like when a colony of ants wants to cross like a gap, they'll create a bridge of ants in order to cross it.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but when they create that bridge, they have to interlock their knees in a certain way that basically breaks their knees. So when they create that bridge, it's a one-time deal. Like those ants that are the bridge are now dead, and they do it for the colony. Exactly. So it makes me think of imagine that from an individual standpoint. It's like you literally like isn't that mind control in like a natural sense?
Yeah,
Because
like
you're not acting out of yourself, you're acting out of the group, right?
welcome to Speculative Sandbox, your audio playground for creative storytellers. My name is Vicky Lawn, and each episode, I and a guest will unpack a fiction trope with an eye for character development and narrative structures. Make sure to look for Speculative Sandbox on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation. Leave comments or questions, or let us know what other tropes we should cover. When the real world just doesn't cut it, let's get lost in a fictional one.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech. Have you ever wondered what it's like to bite into Nerds gummy clusters? They're fruity. They're tangy. They're gummy. And they're crunchy. Nerds Gummy Clusters, a union of fruity sweet gummy and tangy crunchy nerds. Unleash your senses. Shop now at nerdscandy.com.
Mind control may seem like a faraway science fiction concept, but it's grounded in some scary truths. A.R. Mirabal joins the podcast to discuss the broad spectrum of control, including conditioning and the hive mind. Plus, we dive into the frustrating world of social media marketing for authors and how conditioning plays a part in our algorithm challenges. AR, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. We're talking about mind control today. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic was a particular game I played, but we will get into that in a second. Can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us about your latest projects?
I am A. Mirabal. I am an author slash artist slash co-host and host of my own two podcasts. One is Authors Anonymous and the other being the ART podcast. I love science fiction fantasy. I love getting philosophical. I love getting weird. I love aliens. So that's mainly what I write about. My latest project is Into the Great Void, and I'm very excited about it. It has been my child. I've been just getting it ready for years while I was in college, actually studying a lot of the things that I use to create the fictional world and technologies within the book. And it is littered with illustrations and drawings and fake blueprints of the technology, so you can just fully immerse yourself in the world and the story that I want to continue for at least, I would say, 20 books, I think.
Awesome. That's awesome. And the information that you gave me for your biographic, which, by the way, if listeners haven't seen our Instagram platform yet or Twitter, I post bios of all of our guests, and you had some very interesting things to put on your bio. So can you tell me a little bit about your history and some of the interesting things that your family's been through?
Sure. So, my name, A.R. Mirabal, I actually am from the Mirabal family. If anyone is keen to Dominican history, there was actually a dictator about 40-50 years ago named Trujillo, and he was up there. I actually looked up in a list of all-time dictators. He was number 6, I believe, right after Mao. And yeah, he did a thing called the River of Blood, where I think he actually slaughtered 40,000 plus Haitians and actually changed the color of the river river that divides Dominican Republic and Haiti to red momentarily. Like
Wow.
just how much carnage he caused, which is absolute animal. And as all dictators, he was very power hungry. And as the story goes, he saw my great cousins, I believe is what they would be considered. I look at them as like, godparents or even like mothers in an astrological way, honestly. But they were pursued by him, and he tried to go after them romantically. Them being the women that they are, the women of my family were like, no, get lost. He continued pursuing them until the point of punishing them and imprisoning them, and they still refused the hand in marriage.
Wow.
Then he went as far as torturing them until they accepted. He still refused, and then of course their evident death followed soon after.
My gosh.
And within 2 weeks of their death is when the revolution rang, and he was taken from his power in a very aggressive way. I would leave it like that. And if you want to know any more of the more gruesome details, I would definitely look into it. It's honestly riveting piece of history, and I feel honored to be a part of it because they have been remembered very fondly. There have been very books. There's been movies with Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas. I mean, they were on the cover of Times. They have been immortalized on even the money in the Dominican Republic. So it's a huge honor to be able to call upon that as far as inspiration goes. And if you really took a therapeutic eye to most of my writing, a lot of it comes from that sense of rebellion, of not giving in to a power that seems so much grander than yours.
I can't even imagine being in their shoes. How terrifying, and yet their bravery throughout that entire situation. Like that's inspiring, and what a neat thing to pass down through your family and to be able to have that part of like your identity and your spirit. So thank you for sharing that. What a great story.
Thank you for letting me share. I rarely ever get into personal stuff when it comes to like my own marketing and talk on the podcast. So I always love just sharing her story. And honestly, as of today's recording, it's actually my mother's birthday as well. So it all just works perfectly together. And I'm always really inspired by basically what I'm trying to do is take that story and the essence of what that story brings to me and give it out riddled with sci-fi and aliens in between that. If I can do that, I would have accomplished anything that I wanted to do. Honestly.
That is awesome. I instantly relate because when you talk about getting weird, especially with sci-fi and aliens, I'm like, yes, that's what I do too. It's just kind of cool to explore intergenerational trauma and family in a completely different genre. But I think it just makes it so accessible because it's also entertaining and it's fun at the same time, very relatable.
Yes. If you ask me sci-fi just means so much to me. I truly am a fanatic about it, to the point that it almost lessens the love that I have for other genres, because I just relate everything back to sci-fi. It's my home for everything when it comes to, if I want a good comedy, I like my sci-fi comedy. If I want a good drama, good romance, I love my sci-fi romance. It's just everything. And to me, where that comes from is that it's like the opposite of the literary classics, where you would go back to a time frame 200, 300 years in the past, and you still can relate with the characters because it's a classic, and it's a classic because the writers were able to hone down of the emotion they felt at that time. And even 200, 300 years after, you can still relate to those same emotions because humans are still humans.
Yes.
And sci-fi, I love it because it's basically that, but just in the opposite direction, the other opposite winding of the clock. If you look into the future, even with technology that seems mind-bogglingly advanced to us, or even another planets, or even exploring the cosmos, or dealing with clone technology, or dealing with mind control, dealing with all these different type of things, you'll find that humans will still act like humans. And I think that's just a fascinating concept.
Well, let's get to know you a little bit more as a human before we go into the topic. I have some rapid fire warm-up questions. Some of them are general and some of them start to actually go into mind control. So are you ready?
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely ready.
Okay, we're starting easy. Are you a sweet or savory person?
You said that's easy, man. I think that's top. Yeah, that's hard. That's like asking what is God. Like, is there a God? Or um, Honestly, I would have to say sweet because I just have a huge sweet tooth. Unbelievable. When I go on Instagram and I start getting in my loopholes of watching recipes, oh, it's all about that Oreo stuff.
Oh, okay.
All about it.
I relate to that. Okay. When is your favorite time of day to write?
Night.
Night. Okay.
Yeah.
What is one way to combat writer's block?
Treat it like it's going to the gym. There's something that's like sometimes progress doesn't feel like it's made every day, but when you
Mhm.
look at it in a long term, it's always made. So even if it's just you putting in your 200, 300 words, even if it's just editing what you did the day before and telling yourself, why do you write? Oh my God, you should just quit. Just don't and keep
Yeah.
doing it every day, even if it's minuscule, even if it's nothing. Um, the pendulum will swing. You'll have an amazing writing day one day, and you just persevere.
That's some great advice. There are times where I feel like I'm only having a successful writing session if I put down at least 1,000 words, but there's so much to do with like 200 or 100, especially when you can look back at it and go, oh, actually, now I know where I want to jump off of there. But you have to get those words down.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that because I mean, I suppose every writer has an issue with this, but a piece of advice I was given by Mr. Ortiz, a phenomenal author, he said that no matter what, even if he's writing 2,000 words of absolute steaming hot garbage, it's better than doing nothing because at least you can, through editing, through whatever, you can at least polish that down into 100 150 words of something credible, or at least you can polish down the entire idea and refine it into some better writing, but nothing is ever wasted.
Okay, next question. We're going to start going into the topic. Now, when I was prepping for mind control, I also, because mind control is such an extreme form of control, but there's some more nuanced forms of it. So I wanted to allow for flexibility to go back and forth, which is conditioning. So
Hmm.
this question is, what is a normalized occurrence in society that could arguably be considered a product of mind control or conditioning?
Cell phones. I mean, the little notification that you get, especially that each one is indicative to a certain app. That
Mm.
little ring that you get from Snapchat, the little bell that you'll get from Instagram. I would consider those not even good examples, but I mean textbook examples
Oh yeah,
of
Pavlov's
conditioning.
bell
Yeah,
that they're like,
Pavlov's bell. Yeah.
uh-huh. So that you know exactly if someone is Facebooking you or even like the Tinder, or just think people can hear it and they know exactly what you've been doing on your phone.
Yeah, or the worst part is the phantom ringing, where
Oh.
you swear that something is going off in your phone, and you tell yourself, "Oh, you know what? I don't need to do that right now. I'm evolved. I'm not, conditioned." And then you check it 5 minutes later, and you realize you don't have your phone, and then you're like, "Ah,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm extremely conditioned. Actually, I'm
Ooh.
super. They got me well."
If you could mind control someone or something, would you?
Hmm.
That's a
I don't
dark
think I would.
question.
It is
No?
a dark question because, yeah, I don't think I would. I always believe in just like everything being authentic. When you ask like a favor for somebody, you don't want a person to do it begrudgingly. You want to do it because like they're okay with it. And if not, then I'll just figure it out myself.
Yeah,
So I think I
agreed.
would, yeah, I think I would just omit that. Yeah. I don't think I need
Okay.
that in my life.
I get that. I just think it's a lot of work, like to worry about someone else when I can't even figure out my own stuff. Like to be controlling someone else too. Like,
Yeah,
oh no.
that's a better answer, honestly.
Okay, so the topic of mind control, I have some definitions here. Mind control is to remove one's mind and replace it entirely with another. So someone is acting outside of their control. And then conditioning, which is to normalize behavior in a way that actually suits another's agenda, but has become normalized to you. So, what drew you to this topic? Tell me all about it.
Well, like most things in sci-fi, I think like the topic of mind control is, as the example was made with Instagram and Twitter and whatever you want to draw upon for just social media in general, honestly, is that it seems more and more likely that something like that is going to happen. So, especially when you look into like the core inspirations for like sci-fi, you look at like Matrix, things like that, is the idea of like, what are we, who are we, what are we doing? When you start considering the possibility of mind control into that, it really opens up for some very dynamic and interesting things to play around with, themes, characters to create, what is what is real, is reality something that we create in ourselves, is something, is reality a perception, is reality a general thing that somehow is all agreeable to, was reality only exists in the point of view of the person. And I think mind control just is the ultimate umbrella for all those things in a sense, because if you can, like you said, the definition of mind controlling is being able to completely replace a person's mind with another, and then the idea of conditioning is like conditioning a person to suit something that is better. So when you look at just dystopia, most dystopias have an idea of conditioning because they're trying to get the common people, the majority of the population, in order to do a certain way or act a certain way, and that is through conditioning. And without getting too tinfoil in here, I would say, I would argue that that is to a sense happening with just news, or just whatever it may be. Maybe it's just you know, political gerrymandering happening on social media, where certain ads will run in certain districts but not run in others. Just small things like that, where to us it almost just seems like it's, like you said, it just becomes normalized. It's like, oh, that's just business. That's what they do. That's how things work. But it's only been business because we've allowed it to be business. And in that sense, that's when the whole idea of mind control really starts really opening up to what is mind control.
Who benefits in this control relationship?
I would say the person holding the whip.
Is it like, why would they want that? Is it usually like people in power want it because they want a subdued population, they want something out of the person they're controlling? What do you think drives all that?
Man, that's a phenomenal question. I always say that when it comes to, like, Locke versus Hobbes, I truly believe that man is innately good. Maybe that's wishful thinking, maybe that's me being naive, but I truly believe that people, like, I don't believe anybody is out here doing evil for the sake of evil. Even people that do really bad things, I think it's because they've allowed themselves to believe that what they're doing, that the action justify the means, basically, ends justify the means. I'm sorry. So when it comes to that, I truly don't think it's. I mean, it very well could be an idea of just holding power for the sake of holding power and having that over a person. But I think it's mostly just either profits or the idea of releasing information to the public might do something that we don't have a control over. So let's kind of keep it in our circle for a little bit until we can, do better with it. And I think that's, kind of a silly idea. But if I were to logic out why people in power would do that, I think it's because they actually believe in their own twisted way that they're helping. While also lining their pockets, if we can be honest.
Well, it definitely, I feel like it seems in order for you to justify removing one's autonomy and ways of thinking to replace it with another, that you've completely objectified the target audience and do not care about them as human individuals. And like you said, an ends to a mean, or means to an end. I never get that one right, but
yeah, honestly, never made much sense to me either. I
think it's a little scary.
Means to an end. Yeah, that's
means to an end.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, let's talk about some fiction examples. I wanted us to start with fiction first and then go into real world, because everything kind of starts in the real world, doesn't? But fiction seems to be the easiest way. And so I have different examples of conditioning and mind control. Did you want to go first?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so this was interesting, and maybe one that was worth debating. So I was really trying to analyze Bucky in Winter Soldier. Have you seen that movie?
I actually just recently saw that movie too.
Okay.
Yeah.
My first thought was mind control. But once I started to realize the psychological strain on him and the conditioning that was associated with certain, names and phrases, I was like, maybe he's more under conditioning. What do you think? Is he conditioning or mind control?
I would say mind control.
Okay.
But it is a hard toss-up though. I would say mind control because they use words almost in a Pavlovian sense in order to trigger something, but once it is triggered, it's no longer his mind.
Oh, he's gone. Okay.
It's like for your definition of mind control, it's replacing somebody's mind with somebody else in order to fit in a motive or something that another person wants. And I think that's essentially what happens when he goes into that Winter Soldier mode. But I suppose that mind control wouldn't have been possible without conditioning, because in order to break him that way, they would have had to use those words in order to conditioning him before. So it is an interesting concept.
Okay. Alrighty.
Yeah.
Your turn. What do you have? We can
I
just go
would
back and
say,
forth, I guess.
no, I would say what immediately came to my mind earlier was I guess like textbook ideas like Brave New World or 1984.
Oh, I thought
But
1984 too. Are you
yeah,
thinking about the TV footage
yeah,
stuff?
TV,
Yes.
Soma, like everything along those lines. But if I can be honest, one that's a more recent example is actually Black Mirror. I can't remember the name of the episode. I think it's Men on Fire. Man on Fire. It's
Okay.
when it's an episode where they basically have these genetically enhanced soldiers and they go into a war zone, and what they believe they're seeing, what they believe they're hunting, what they believe they're executing are these almost zombie-like humans that have been mutated through some type of warfare, and now they have to kill them because like they're saving humanity. So like not only are they killing them with um efficiency, they're killing them with like passion behind it. Like these are their enemies, so they're going for it. You find out that what the genetic implementation was actually to change how they viewed those people. Those people weren't mutated, they were regular humans, they were refugees. So
Wow.
yeah, so when the soldier realized this and he asked his commanding officer what had happened, this quote has stayed with me for so long, honestly. It's he said that the firing rate, like the missing rate of soldiers in World War One was about 80%. Meaning they missed 80% of the time. In World War II, it was something like 90%. And supposedly the reason for those numbers is because even though they had it in their mind that like the other person was a warrior, there's something about the human consciousness that like still believes that like a human is a human, and you still don't want to, even though like you have to fire in that direction. You're not trying to hurt somebody.
Mm.
So what he said that the only way they can condition the soldiers out of it was to make them believe that the enemy they were fighting was a truly outside of the realm, just monster, a villain. And that is what they were able to do. And
That's
I think,
terrifying.
yeah, it's terrifying. And I think that in itself is something that we see a lot, not trying like, leaving it like in the fictional sense for now as much as possible. But I think we see real world examples of that all the time. They might not be as technologically savvy about it. It might not be as rampant as we see it, but it happens in very small, um, you know, events, circumstances around the world that you hear about in the news and kind of quickly kind of get washed over by whatever happens the day next or the week following. But I would say that those are experiments. Those are controlled tests for what could happen in the future, honestly.
Oof. Yeah, that does sound very probable. The conditioning, because that makes me think of 1984 as well, but also A Clockwork Orange, where the main character was conditioned to respond to certain triggers whenever they would show like what was it? Whenever they would show him like acts of violence or things like that, and they would feed him something that would make him sick. So then
Yeah.
anytime he wanted to be violent later, once he was released, he'd just start throwing up and being violently ill. It's kind of it's amazing how your body can be turned against you because he doesn't want to be sick, but his brain's been conditioned to a point where it's acting outside of his control.
Yeah, my God, shameless plug here, but it just made me think about it right now. One thing that I did for my book was, I believe my chapter 2 starts off with the line, "I love today," because it's the character's birthday. So it's the character when he is 15 years old, and he is talking about how much he loves the day. It's a 15-year-old on their birthday, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Then 2 chapters after that, it flips forward to him when he is 35 years old on his birthday, and the first line says, "I hate today."
Oh,
So what you understand in those 20 years is that he has been conditioned by XYZ, by just events that have just torn away at that innocence that he once had, and now he hates a day that he once loved. Um that just made me think of the same thing that you were talking about with the Clockwork Orange, how you can be conditioned to do something completely opposite, and how the brain just can put up walls in order to defend yourself, in order to just survive. Because at the end of the day, that's what the brain is for. Whatever survival means, what it will do.
Yeah. Yes. Switching over to mind control real quick, like complete mind control, where, you know, someone else is controlling you now, like full on controlling you, rather than any form of conditioning.
Yeah,
I came up with Wanda in WandaVision, or any kind of way that Wanda takes over people's minds and messes with them.
yeah, that's
Um,
good.
and also mind control, like complete mind control, is very prominent in kids fiction, and just entertainment. So an example would be in Mario Odyssey. It's the one of the latest video games with Mario World. He will take over the host. Like if he throws a hat at a character, he'll like just take over them.
Huh.
And the like in one of the lands, there's a dinosaur that's sleeping, and the dinosaur will trample you if you wake him up. But if you throw your hat on him, you go into the dinosaur, and now you're controlling everything the dinosaur is doing, which is terrifying for the dinosaur and any other character that happens to, because Mario's just using them as he, proceeds through the game. And then of course there's the Imperio curse in Harry Potter, where you
Yeah.
completely controlling someone. So I was like, wow, there's a lot a lot of examples of complete mind control that kids watch, and I was just like, that's so interesting.
My God, that is phenomenal, because the one that immediately pops into my head is Get Out. The whole
Oh.
sinking into yourself scene, and when the guy gets shown a picture of himself from the past, and his nose starts bleeding because it's
Ooh.
like literally the brain is having an aneurysm, trying to deal with the two consciousness in place, and which one is dominant and which one can actually control the body. That movie is a textbook example of like a just amazing mind control. It's so, to me, that shows that the true, like what you said, is that they put like the Mario hat scene, put it in a childlike wonder. It's like, oh, look how cute it is. Now the dinosaur has a Mario hat on. But like Get
Mhm.
Out was like the true, like, oh wow, this is terrifying when you actually sit and consider it.
Yeah. Yes, it is really scary. And when we first were emailing back and forth, I mentioned to you a video game called Inside,
Yes,
which got me really interested in it. I don't know if you've had a chance to play it yet.
I have not.
Okay. It's available, like if we have it on Nintendo, it's like $1.99 in the on the online store. It's surprisingly accessible. But the way that Inside starts is you're on the run, and you're in a forest, and you're outrunning what appears to be human traffickers. You have these people with guns and flashlights and dogs, and they're loading people up into a semi truck and driving away. And as you are trying to escape and run away, you go from the forest and you proceed into like a farm area. Then you go into what looks like a city. And it looks like there are people that look like lifeless forms just walking around, being controlled and tested like they're going to be used for something. And the further into the game, you realize that these things are these people. I say things because it turns out they're not people. They're called husks, I believe. So they look like people on the outside, but they're mind controlled to do labor, like work in the mines and do a lot of like the hard labor stuff. And eventually the whole point of the game is the source of the husk doesn't want to be mind controlled anymore. And so there's a connection with that source and the boy that you're playing, because the boy is like, ultimately you're trying to escape the control of these humans that are using it. But it kind of freaked me out playing the whole game, because you see how these husks are being used for like working in the mines in really dangerous conditions. And it just like, because they look like us, it immediately, like, my first assumption initially were these are people that were being controlled, and how they could just be discarded at any point. But it's such a good game. I highly, highly recommend it. Artistically, it's gorgeous. It's made by the same people who did Inside, and shoot, I'm forgetting what the other game was called, but these are award-winning games. Anyway, I wanted to share that.
No, that's phenomenal. If I can be honest, you explaining that to me, I know we were trying to like steer away from it, the nonfiction, but it immediately made me think of Amps.
Okay.
Like, I know it seemed a little like left field, but ants, you've seen like how like when a colony of ants wants to cross like a gap, they'll create a bridge of ants in order to cross it.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but when they create that bridge, they have to interlock their knees in a certain way that basically breaks their knees. So when they create that bridge, it's a one-time deal. Like those ants that are the bridge are now dead, and they do it for the colony. Exactly. So it makes me think of imagine that from an individual standpoint. It's like you literally like isn't that mind control in like a natural sense?
Yeah,
Because
like
you're
they're
not
using
acting
it.
out of yourself, you're acting out of the group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Oh
know.
gosh, that's scary because I can relate so much of like human groupthink to like the bug world. There's just so
Yeah.
many parallels. And so when you're talking, I'm like, if you can see it in ants, I wouldn't be surprised if not that we're going to automatically start killing ourselves to make bridges, but someone's going to think, and they already kind of are, in order for the good of society, some people have to be sacrificed. And that's just the way it is.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, I can 100% see it already, honestly. Just by the way, I'm for as much as I love talking about like all the down stuff, like the reason why I like I don't know, focus so much on the crazy side of technology is because I truly think that if you have like I'm also really hopeful, like hopeful for like humanity's future, if I can be
Oh yeah.
completely honest. For as like horrible as it may go, I truly believe it just won't.
Hmm.
Hopefully.
Well, I
Fingers
think that's
crossed.
the beauty of, well, I felt like yes, a lot of our sci-fi exploration these days in pop culture is like warnings, right?
Yeah.
Don't do this, don't do that, it's gonna be bad. But I feel like there was back in the 50s, like the optimism of like mid-century sci-fi and
So
how we
hopeful.
envision the Jetsons. You know, that
Yeah.
is a beautiful concept to think what are the possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is, I think we've just been crushed by late stage capitalism. Just like everything becoming a product and like something that's selling, like how we've been, relating it to like the what we talked about before about the just conditioning. We've just been conditioned that everything is as it is, that ads should just be everywhere, and I don't know, like
Mhm.
all the different things that like our society has progressed into. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily bad either because I think like for as much as people talk about, shrinking attention spans and TikTok and things like that, the content that these youngsters are coming out with is pretty highbrow, if I can be honest. If you look for like the right one. So I don't know. I think our future's pretty hopeful, honestly. I think the next generation they seem pretty cool, if I can be honest.
Yeah. Do you want to move into real world or do you have any other fictional examples?
Well, no, we can move into real world. Like I guess the only other thing I could think of is like Minority Report, the three oracles basically, because they
Mhm.
also acted in a way that wasn't fully in control of their own thoughts. They just seemed like they were a part of like this mass or like this like kind of like hive mentality. I guess I would have to ask you a question if that's like possible.
Mhm.
Would you consider hive mentality like hive society, a hive civilization? Would you consider that mind control?
To a degree, yeah, because I would think the opposite of mind control is like complete autonomy. And if you don't have complete autonomy, then in the hive mind, yeah, I would see that as a form of, because would it be, there wouldn't be conditioning involved? Would it be just like an automatic, this is what you do and think for the benefit of the community versus education and teachings?
Man, that's an interesting question. Like, does an ant even have an idea of individualism? Is
Oh,
that even a
that's true.
concept that they understand? Or like a bee? Do they have an idea? Like, when a bee looks at itself in the mirror, does it understand that it's a bee, or does it just think that it's like another cell in a large organism?
Mm, yes,
Man, that's
our
fascinating.
our self-awareness does complicate things. Our self-awareness and our the knowledge that we know that there's an end. Because we talk like I was listening to someone else, another
That's
podcast, was talking
heavy,
about like
man.
dogs and cats don't know there's an end. So they live their life so freely, but we're such an anxious, species because there's so much hinging on what can we accomplish before we die and what's going to happen after. Uh,
God, that
interesting.
is so true. I can't. There was actually a poem that I read like a long time ago. I'm gonna butcher it, but it was on the along the lines of the most beautiful thing about life is that we know that it begins and that we know it ends. Um,
Mhm.
obviously all art is like left to interpretation, but I think that if you think about it that way, it could be kind of nice. It's like the instead of it thinking that it's just forever, that we have a solid knowledge of it, that we know what's going to happen, but we don't know when or how or anything like that. And you can either live in that fear or the anxiety or just live in the present. I think that's kind of like a cool concept, but
Do
at
you
the same
think
time, it is
the
really scary.
do you think the ants in the bridge know there's an end? Like when they perform sacrificial acts, do they know? Or like bees when they sting and the sting is their swan song.
All right, if I can be honest, the ant one, I do. That is like really philosophical to me. That's like wow. Because I have no even concept of that. I
Uh-huh.
like because like maybe it's just like the writer in me, but I'm thinking about it like from like a movie point of view. You have like the soundtrack in the middle. You have like the ant getting crawled over as he looks into the sunlight, and then like all the last ant crawls over him, and then he realizes, oh, this is it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's like depressing. But when I think about the beat, I don't know why. Maybe it's just because like I put human emotions to it. But I just like consider the beat getting like really pissed off of me. Like, oh yeah, watch this. It's like one of those people that are really angry in traffic and do some crazy
Yes.
maneuver to try to like prove their point. I think about it like that. They're
They
like, oh
like
yeah, well
flip
watch
over.
this. Yeah,
It's like justice, ultimate justice.
exactly. It's like, oh yeah, well watch this, and then they end up dying. They're like, ah man, I should have been more calm. And I should have went to therapy. And he falls over to his
That's you
death.
know what though, your original question though about hive mind is hive mind control. Yeah, but okay, here's my thought. It is mind control for the benefit of the hive because it's at the detriment of the individual. That's my thought. What do you think?
I would agree. I
Okay.
would agree in the sense of like what we understand of hive mind. I would consider like with other sci-fi that I've read, some that I've written myself, the there is, and again, we've never seen it, so like who knows if it's actually possible in nature. But in other sci-fi works I've read, even in Ender's Game, there is a society of hive-minded people, but they also it's both. It's dual. They also have an idea of individualism, and in those same books, when like the humans would confront those society and be like, "Oh, how you don't even have an idea of individuality," and he goes like, "Well, do you? Everything like you're basically a culture of people. Like if you put yourself in the woods by yourself, you'd probably die out in a month. But if we put a group of you together, now you live. Like you're in the same sense, but you just have your consciousness doesn't agree with it. You have an idea of individualism, but you really don't have it because in order to survive, you have to be within a group. So it is an interesting concept. I don't know. I think that just us being humans will always make us view other things as being humans,
Yeah,
or
yeah, a
like
lot of
we'll always yeah,
projection.
yeah,
Well, and
exactly. We just project our emotions everywhere.
you have to hope too that the hive mind actually has everyone's best interest at heart. I think a lot about the analogy of like crabs in a bucket when they're all in a bucket and they're all destined to die because they're being farmed or whatever. By farmed, I mean, I guess collected from the ocean. And they'll start crawling out, or the ones that get crawled out will get pulled back down. And it's just like an
What?
automatic
Really?
response. Isn't that kind of sad?
What? That's
Yeah.
not even sad. That's just so petty. Again,
Yeah.
I just think of the dark humor and everything. I'm thinking like an office episode that like one, like a Jim fun like squeezes out and like Michael just pulls it back in. It's like, I don't think so, not today.
Yeah. And okay, so in cases where, petty people don't like to see other people get, accomplish greater things and they pull people down, like, is that a hive mind? Like what
Huh,
enables that on such a large scale? That
man.
idea of conformity to not stand out of jealousy, out of safety, is do we have a hive mind and we just don't know it?
Oh my God. No, yeah, that's the sound of a person having one of those epiphanies that you just stare out a window and think for a second. Because no, honestly, the more the more I think about it, especially when you contribute social media, where like somebody will post 12 seconds of a 4-minute clip and post they'll put a title for that video that is completely opposite of what's happening in the video, and then all the comments will be they agreeing and defending the point of the poster.
Mm.
And then that one comment will say, "Oh yeah, this is a complete farce. This is a complete lie." And that comment gets like downvoted to obliteration. Like everyone just hates that one thing because we just immediately pack on to
Uh-huh.
hive mentality. Bill Burr has one of my favorite jokes that he says that people, when they argue, they will just go to imright.com and find information that agrees with what they're saying, even if what they're saying is wrong.
I didn't
Like,
know about imright.com.
no, it's not a real thing. That's what
Oh.
the joke that he made. It's like, they'll go to imright.com and just go and just find whatever they want as a resource and regurgitate it back to you, even if it's not true. You
Yeah,
know,
yes.
no matter about your stance about flat Earth or globe Earth, is there even a name for the opposite end, or is it just called logic? But whatever.
Science.
Yeah, it's just called sense. But when it comes to that, no matter on your point of view on it, no matter like how that happened, just the pure act that like another human could come up with that. I mean, it's just I don't know. At the end of the
That
day,
is
I think
interesting.
we might have a hive mind. I can't lie to you.
No, I think food for thought. Our listeners can continue to mull that one over. I did have an interesting encounter when I had the conspiracy episode last season. I would basically break up the podcast topics into social media posts and I share them. And one of them was that there have been a lot of kind of like what's happening right now with the hazmat situations throughout the US. There was actually a semi crash near where I live and released some nitric acid into
Oh
the
my
air
God,
or
you're near
oxide.
that?
Yes.
Oh my God. I was just talking to a friend about that yesterday. We were going in.
Yes, it was a little scary. It's on the opposite side of town of me, but I work in emergency communications and I was like ready to go
Oh
with
God.
region-wide emergencies and apparently it didn't get to that level, so I'm okay where I'm at least. But anyway, Ohio and like everywhere else that there's all these, so right now that's huge. But okay, so last year it was about food processing plant explosions. And so we were talking about, and I can't, it's too soon for me to say anything about these hazmat situations. And the one in
Yeah.
Ohio is obviously astronomically awful. But for the food processing plants, they talk about in the great big picture, there's quantities of these plant issues throughout the year. But right now, because of like algorithms and stuff, people are getting more exposure to the processing plant stuff. People were assuming that enemies were messing with their food because kill off the food, kill off the people kind of
Oh my God.
idea. And all I did was share a video that talked about it. And because I hashtagged food processing plants, I had a ton of people that thought I was like, I was just educating on the conspiracy and talking about like its existence and stats. But people thought I was saying that, I was like, confirming it or something, like actually
Oh
saying
my
the
God.
conspiracy
Yeah.
is true. And people would automatically report it. So that video kept getting taken down. I'm like, what is happening? So like
What?
in that instance, people were not really listening. They were just automatically, you know, responding in a way that they were, from whatever side of TikTok they're on. But it was really interesting.
That is fascinating. If I can be honest, and it kind of goes in line with the political thing. I remember when I was I don't know, in 2016, back when people like when the whole idea of not bringing up politics and normal conversation was still kind of like yeah, let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
But we we were talking about like my family's pretty like open, so we were talking about like politics, and I started getting like a little bit heated because obviously I'm pretty like liberal, and then like my family is pretty conservative Catholic Dominicans, so we started talking about, I believe we were in New York, and there was like a huge thing came out that a woman had been caught using her EBT to buy lobsters and then selling the lobsters. And it was a huge thing. It was like this whole like class thing about like, oh, should they get rid of the services and put less money into it and XYZ. My mom's like a very open person. She was talking about like you don't know the help that a person could need and all these things. And then like, my cousins were like arguing back. It's like, no, we came to this country and like, worked our butt off in order to get here, and that's what other people should do. Just going like back and forth on it. And all I said, it was like, isn't it crazy that you're so riled up over this poor woman, but you don't even bat an eye, not even an eye, to these corporations taking millions
Mm-hmm.
in money that they should be getting taxed on, millions in shortcutting their employees so that they don't have to pay for pensions, billions in healthcare regulations that they just straight up avoid and profit trillions off of. And then when they get hit with the fine is like $10,000. Like, you get so mad over this poor woman taking a maximum of 50K, but don't even bat an eye at the corporations taking millions. Why is that? Because the people with the millions have sway with the media, and because of like we're just in this perpetual thing of putting so much blame on something else when it's not even there. It made me that example made me immediately think of like what you're talking about with the food processor, because these people over here are worried that some other country is messing with our food, forgetting the fact that our own food companies are messing with our food. You don't even have to look, you don't even have to outsource that. What do you mean? Nestle, what are you talking about?
They're like there's only a certain percentage of chocolate that's still in Nestle. Like it's not really even chocolate anymore. Like their standard candies. They can't even really call it chocolate. It's just candy.
I'm telling you, I picked up I picked up like a candy bar a couple days ago, and they didn't say chocolate, it said chocolate candy. And I'm old enough now to like, yeah, if they have to use words like that, then it's not that. If you pick up a juice and it says it's like a juice drink, trust me, that has less juice in it than a soda. Like you might as well drink a soda.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting, the conditioning of the real world to be to redirect, to misinform. It's yeah, obviously we can get extremely political here, but it's just really interesting, the things that are kind of normalized as far as systems go. And I was thinking of what you said earlier at the very beginning, the perceptions of the world depending on your media algorithm, and how algorithms can change all the time. And quite honestly, we don't really understand what's being shown to us and how on like the TikTok algorithms. We aren't there. We aren't working for the company. When they say that you get so many hits, we don't actually know that. You know, I feel like these are just numbers that they provide. And many times those numbers can be meaningful numbers. Like, oh, okay, 1,000 people actually saw my video and liked it. Or it could be 1,000 people, but lots of them were like, maybe not even, like they were bots. They weren't even real accounts. You know what I mean? But you wouldn't know. You just have these numbers to work off of.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you know it. A lot of people listening, you know, any author doing their own marketing, you know, we rely on social media, obviously,
Yes.
and not only do we rely on it, we also rely on the statistics that they provide, and it is unnerving to a different degree when I sit back and I try to do my numbers and I'm like, oh, what time should I post? When should I do this? And the statistics that I get are, in all honesty, meaningless, because good friends of mine that I have on Instagram, that we both follow each other, talk constantly, send each other messages, because they're not authors, maybe because they're not artists, they don't even see my post. It doesn't even show up on their homepage or on their searches, on their explore page. It doesn't even show up. It's not even in the realm of things that they see. We're talking about people that know me personally, never get shown my content.
Yeah. It's
and
go ahead.
Which is
Sorry.
just no, because all I was gonna say was that it's just weird, and I'm not even coming from a point of like, oh, me, this is how it should be working, but it's just like, all right, well, if we're friends and you're not even showing them my content, then what are you showing them? Like, how are you dictating what content is content?
Well, something that kind of sad and scary to me was on TikTok, I used to just get really, really random stuff, and it has, narrowed down. I mostly like crazy dogs and, funny animals. And then because they kind of triangulated my age and the fact that I'm in a family, I start getting a lot of those related stuff. I did not get any author ones until I started gearing my podcast. And my podcast is it's in the speculative fiction realm, but like it covers a lot of what you could argue is broad. Like we talk about fantasy fight scenes and that. Now we're talking about mind control, like it could be all over the place. And so I think TikTok would try to hit those individual things as I would promote these posts. I didn't get to start seeing actual writers until I started actually gearing my stuff toward writers, which makes me think that writers are only getting seen by other writers, and which is hard, because what if writers aren't your target audience? You want readers, and the readers who want whatever genre you're writing in. Like I just started noticing all of these like small, what do you call small business authors. I'm like, I didn't see you until the TikTok started pegging me as you. So it's like, are you reaching your audience correctly?
My God.
Yeah.
That
So
actually no, yeah, that actually really sunk into me, because that is 100% true. It's something that I would talk to my friends over here and hear about it, just like peers, other authors. And I guess sometimes you want to believe the opposite, because once in a while you'll get that one person that comments like, "Oh, this sounds great. I'll pick up the book," um, and you believe it's like, all right. Well, that's proof positive. But I think at the end of the day, you're right. Most of our content really just regurgitates to other people within the same circle. So really, to
yeah.
break that mold, you would have to. Well, something that will forever very much annoy me, but honestly, I don't want to be hateful. So I mean, like, just God bless everybody. Like, the hustle. I respect hustle above anything, but it always annoys me when I see a person that has a book talk account, meaning they read books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have much higher follower count, much higher engagement count, much higher comments, higher likes, higher shares than the very authors they're reviewing. Like, that in itself is it boggles me. And an argument could be made, it's like, oh well, maybe the author isn't promoting themselves to the same degree that this book talk person is, but then you look into the author and they are. So it's just like, all right, well, Instagram just isn't being fair here, because
Oh, interesting.
when the reader drops a post, it's talking to all readers, and we don't even have to sit here and philosophize about which group is going to be bigger between writers and readers.
Do you,
um
should we pretend to be readers? Like,
That's
should
what
we?
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I actually just got like an idea for a reel. Like, just like me showing up with like a little mustache, and like like a glasses with a nose tied out, like, attached to it, and just pretend like I'm a reader. That's gonna have to be what I do for the algorithm in order to get higher engagement or higher whatever it may be. Because even the
Yes.
podcast I'm thinking about now, I'm wondering if I'm only reaching out to other podcasts, because ironically enough, now I'm getting all these different followings and different things from other podcasts.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe
I
it's
should
just a
clarify too,
circle.
like, clearly we are reading and we are readers, but the algorithm probably doesn't peg us as such. So then we have to,
Exa-
like, that's what we're talking about. If anyone's like, what do you mean you're not reading? Well, yes, of course we're reading. But
yeah.
we be marketable readers.
Exactly. What we're basically what I'm arguing about is basically, when an author posts, their engagement is only going to people that both write and read, which is a much narrower group than people that just read, which is
Mm,
the issue. Like, we would
yes.
want, the whole point is that you want to be able to target people that you want to target. But then this is where it gets annoying. I think that it does work like that, but only if you pay Instagram, if you boost your, that's when I think they start hitting accounts that you want to be doing. It's like everything else. It's like, like the free version is cool, but hey, with the pro, you can get all these extra additions. So really, it's just another. Now we're being sold on engagement.
Well, what makes me
Even
sad, and
engagement is a product.
this is where conditioning, because this all is related. Like, it's not kind of a tangent, but not really, because the conditioning that I watched over the last decade of the normalization of this system is scary.
If I can be honest, as you said that, it made me think that the biggest example, the biggest case that I've seen about that, of kind of like conditioning that had just rolled over, is, do you remember 6 years ago when people would joke about, like, oh, my phone's listening to me? I was talking about lawnmowers and then I used my phone and there were lawnmowers there. That was a common joke
Uh-huh.
between people, right?
Yes.
Now that is as commonplace as the sun is going to come out tomorrow.
Yeah.
It just happens. It just happens. If you're with your friend and you start talking about a relationship, guaranteed, when you go on your phone, within 3 posts you're going to be you're going to see things related to a relationship. If you are talking about a song that you can't remember, you're going to be shuffling on Spotify one day and it will pop up. It's just, it is
Mm-hmm.
so weird how something like that invasive has been normalized.
Well, and what's
And when we've
interesting,
allowed it to be normalized, we, like, instead of joking about it, we should have immediately ran to our political officials, the people that represent us, and be like, hey, yeah, laws need to be behind this. How is
yes.
my phone listening to me when I don't want it to be listening to me?
Well,
But now we've swung the opposite way.
one way that I could see how this has been enabled. So I, in my other life, my parallel life, I work on websites that face a huge public audience. And one of the biggest challenges we had when we were first establishing the navigation system is the general person that wants the website to read their mind. whether they want a specific service or they want to understand where they can get a particular thing. I'm trying not to be too transparent about what I do. Anyway, but that was like, we're literally like, the perfect website would be one that reads your mind. And unfortunately, we can't. But now, as the years have gone by, there's triangulation, and websites can now, apps are talking to each other. As anyone with an Apple phone knows, they'll get that notification, like, do you want this app to talk to other apps? And now they're starting to read your mind through that way. And I think because there's that assumed benefit that I don't have to have that much effort to look where I want to look, it'll just pop up for me. It allows for these services to happen, but it's a little scary at the same time.
Yeah, it's one of those. No, again, I don't know. I guess like the way that my brain thinks, I just always consider that, if this is where we're at an inch, where will we be in a foot?
Oh
Type
yeah.
of thinking. So I always consider that, yeah, if we're allowing this now, I can only imagine what future generations will continue to allow. Just it is I don't know. It's a conversation that I always have with anyone that will listen to me, honestly. I almost sound like a crazy old person. Um I always just ask myself, like, has it always been like this? Like when I start thinking that, like, man, just this point in life right now, this point in history, this point in our political infrastructure, this point in our technological advancement, did other generations think the same thing? When the TV came out and everyone was about books, were there people my age looking like, oh no, this is it, we're done. These kids are over here watching TV now. That's it. We're done. We're done. We're done. There's no way we can advance from this. Did it always feel like that? You know what I mean? Because
Well, eventually we're
again,
going to have it
everything is
projected
perception,
directly
right?
into our brains. That'll be our next step.
Oh my God.
And
Again,
then we'll have complete mind control right then. That's the gateway.
oh my God.
Entertainment.
I try to have these arguments with my friends constantly, where he always talk to me about like the neural link, and he goes like, "Oh, that's going to be the end. Like that's going to be the new evolution of humans." And I'm like, "Dude, you're not thinking. If you're having if there is a device that can beam information in, don't you think it can also put other information in when you don't want it to? The same way that your phone always listening when it's not supposed to, or going a little bit further, if it can put things in, that means it can output things. So,
yes, yeah, it's not just hacking
what are you
your
thinking?
computer for passwords anymore.
Exactly. It's like real stuff. It's like it's cyberpunk. It's neuromancer. It's like
Yes.
legit. We're gonna see things that are just completely take over. And just another thing that is just really is really interesting to me is people that make like those like finance blogs or finance whatever, and those things are fascinating to me because they'll talk about some class about them being a millionaire and all these things. And the main thing in my head when I read these posts or when I find about these people is this real? Because there's literally nothing stopping you from just going on vacation to Dubai, right? And taking a video while you're taking a couple videos while you're there of like you using like a laptop and pretend like you're this millionaire person. There's nothing stopping you from seeing a really nice car when you're walking around central London and just sitting in front of it and saying like, oh yeah, be like me, I'm cool.
Yes.
Because humans will just react to that. It was something that I read about, it was like an article saying that humans react to people that they think are at a higher status than them. So for example, if I made a motivational speech right now just in my living room as a normal person, it would get some likes, it would get some views, but it wouldn't do as well as me saying the exact same thing in a nice suit with a Rolex on at the lobby of some really nice hotel. Just because it just, even though what I'm saying, even the same passion, everything could be the same, but just the aesthetic of it will respond to more people. Why?
So
Who knows?
so what you're telling me is that if we want to start conditioning people more into liking you and, I guess liking you, you gotta wear the costume.
Yeah, you gotta wear the costume.
These Instagram lifestyles can be so fabricated. Oh, and I have a theory about all those, when people say, let me teach you how to get rich, take my workshop and you'll be rich too. I always think, well, that workshop is part of the scheme. They're making money. They
Yes.
make money off you.
Yes, exactly. My favorite is when they say like, "Oh, buy my book and you'll be rich." And in my head, I'm like, that's what you're doing.
Yep.
The book is the deal. What are you talking about? You just
Yes.
suckered me into buying it. That's what you did. Hook, line, and sinker.
All right. So
No.
we're at the hour. I have one more thing, but did you want to say something before we do that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to talk about, like, is mind control real? And so now I have a case study, like actually real, not just like in fantasy and fiction, sci-fi worlds, but have we accomplished it here? And have you heard of MK Ultra?
Yes. 100%.
Okay. Yes, it is the CIA's secret quest for mind control. I'm getting this information from an NPR article. I want to be able to quote my sources here. But during the Cold War, the CIA thought the communists had discovered a drug or a technique that would allow them to control minds. So the CIA then created a secret program called MK Ultra to search for this drug that could then be weaponized against enemies. This happened in the 50s to early 60s. They were covertly funded at universities and research centers, and some experiments were done in American prisons and in detention centers in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. What they did to subjects, okay, this is what they were trying to do, right? They believe that mind control must first, you seize control by blasting away the existing mind. Then you have to find a way to insert a new mind. They never figured out how to insert a new mind, but they did a lot of work on blasting the existing mind, which was torture, electroshock, high doses of LSD. So thousands of people's lives, maybe even more than, I don't know, but like, were destroyed or they were killed. So ultimately, the CIA concluded mind control is not possible. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love conspiracy theories. Not believing in them, but I just think they are phenomenal sources of motivation for writing. But the MK Ultra thing in particular was always interesting to me because that literally is what led to the discovery of LSD. LSD was meant as an artificial replacement for DMT. It was supposed to be an artificial, like making it artificial, an artificial version of DMT. And the reason they started with that is because they understood that DMT, it basically lifted the consciousness out of the body and allowed the consciousness to like flow like elsewhere. So in studying that, they were like, all right, well, maybe that's just the first part. If we lifted the consciousness out of the body, could we put another consciousness into that slot, right? Kind of like you just like blew the cartridge of an N64. Like, can we switch out Mario Kart and put in Sonic now? And in that, I think that is just unbelievably fascinating because even that's like the high ticket examples of it, but even our myths have examples of that when people would take DMT and then they would say that they were possessed by like a demon or something like that. Isn't that in essence like mind control, leaving the consciousness and then some other extra dimensional whatever being is like now in charge of like that body? That in itself is the basis for a lot of like myths from back then, and now we have this like MK Ultra thing that is trying to weaponize it. So I still think it's honestly possible. I think that the CIA like saying that is maybe like them finding out and then being like, all right, well, you know what, couldn't do it, oh well, and then just working on it in silence.
Yeah, like why would they tell us if they actually discovered it?
Exactly. That makes no sense. That's like when you were a kid and you really wanted pizza and your parents said they had no money, and in the back of your head you're like, you have money.
Yeah.
We can get McDonald's.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, okay. I do think it's possible, honestly.
Well, I could talk much longer about this, and the hour flew by. And so, wow, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. Can't wait to share with their listeners. Do you have any final thoughts, last words, or promotions that you'd like to make?
Well, as far as last words go, kind of going back to what we talked about before with like what authors need to do for engagement. I think we need to go in the route of like the music industry. I think we need to have like like beef with each other. Know what I mean? We need to just start like calling out other authors and be like, hey, you know what, romance ain't about it, and just start like making like disc books, disc novels,
which will attract attention. Yes.
Yeah, just start a drama, and then 3 months after that, clear the drama up. It's like, oh yeah, me and Stephen King are back. We're cool and whatnot, and it's just like a Photoshop of me and Stephen King awkwardly. in a in a coffee booth somewhere. That's what we need to do.
Funny.
Start wearing chains and like, you know, driving around, just like show me like a picture of like me in a Camry, but like, you know, like bumping the audiobook, like, yeah, man, that's how we roll out here. We need to start doing that, honestly.
Okay.
We need to all get on board with it. But as far as promotions go, the Into the Great Void is first time I'm actually saying it out loud outside of like my own podcast. It is coming out March 13th is the official day for it. It's on its pre-order phase right now. If you go to my website, neotino.net, it is up there, and there is a promo box sale right now where you get a copy of the paper book when it is released, signed, 3 mini posters, 5x8, that have, you know, the blown up images of like the images within the book, 3 bookmarks, a custom illustration / painting from me that will also be fit in there, as well as 2 other knickknacks you can pick for yourself, all for $12. That doesn't include shipping. I think shipping is a flat $9 across the United States. And then the ebook pre-order is just $1. So you can pre-order it and get the ebook when it comes out for just $1. So that's neotino.net, available right now. And it should very much still be out when it is when this comes live. You can still go up and pick it up, so make sure to do so. It's going to be amazing. I'm honestly really excited for it.
Speculative Sandbox is a volunteer-run podcast that relies on the collaboration of fellow creators like you. Join the conversation and participate in fun polls and questionnaires on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Interested in being in a future episode? Our DMs are open, or you can email speculativesandbox@gmail.com.